Raja Ampat is a diver's paradise. The Raja Ampat Dive Lodge is the gateway to that diver's paradise. The jetty is the path to paradise. Nestled in a lush tropical jungle on the edge of a pristine island, you could not ask for a nicer place to be. As much as possible, the natural environment is undisturbed by the presence of the dive lodge. But let's wind the clock back to the start of the journey. I started at the ultra-modern Singapore airport, a popular starting point for any dive trip. The journey to Raja Ampat Sorong Airport can go via Jakarta and Makassar, Bali and Makassar, or via Manado, whichever suits your timing. These days, Sorong is served by several airlines, all equipped with modern jet aircraft. I chose to travel on Garuda. Even while still at the airport, you can start to absorb some of the wonderful Papuan culture. This woman is selling betel nut to incoming passengers, probably returning locals who've missed a good chew. The dive lodge meets guests at the airport and takes care of all the transportation and baggage right to the resort. A short drive brings you to a small jetty where a speedboat waits to whisk you to the resort. 3 200 horsepower engines, this boat is fast. The next hour and a half is spent relaxing on the speedboat as it exits the port of Sorong and flies over the calm waters out to the resort. Soon the boat enters the straits between the long thin island of Mansur and the larger island of Gam. After a couple of small villages, the Raja Ampat Dive Lodge appears, nestled between the beach and the mountain, blending into its surrounds. The jetty is a focal point of the resort for arrivals, departures, and for the diving. It's also a great dive site itself, but more of that later. Friendly staff help the travel-weary divers. A welcome drink and a cool towel is a sign of the great hospitality experienced throughout a stay at the Raja Ampat Dive Lodge. Around the lodge, one sees cultural artifacts from both Papua and Bali, the home of the resort owners, including a small Balinese temple. A large carved chess set provides amusement between dives. The rooms are large, comfortable, and well appointed, while fitting well with the local surroundings. The rooms are comfortable, air-conditioned, and roomy, combining a local rustic feel with modern amenities. What's really special is the view from the rooms. Plants, the beach, and then the sea, right outside the window. The resort's coconut trees also provide fresh drinks for the evening dinner. For all this resort loveliness, we are here to dive, so let's look at the dive facilities. Large rinse tanks and a long wetsuit rack keep the diver's gear in good condition between dives. A modern compressor room fills the tanks with the cleanest air on the planet, thousands of kilometers from any pollution. The diving is professionally organised with a lot of flexibility as the dive guides cater to your diving preferences. Over 30 dive sites of several different types are reachable from the resort's dive speedboats, providing a lot of choice and variety. Like most things at this resort, the diving revolves around the jetty. The dive guides and boat divers prepare all your gear on the boat, so you just need to walk to the boat and start your dive. Lazy, but lovely. Within minutes of arriving at the Manta Sandy coral bommies, the first manta ray shows up. These two bommies are a popular cleaning station for the mantas. In 1 hour, I saw 6 mantas arrive, and each spend up to 15 minutes swooping around the coral heads. As the manta hovers or glides over the coral, small fish swim out and pick tiny parasites off their skin. The mantas are accustomed to divers and will approach quite closely, sometimes passing within a few centimetres. If several divers are there at the same time, the dive guides have agreed a system where the divers form a line marked by a row of dead coral so that they can all see the manta rays without interfering with each other's view. Sometimes the mantas arrive in pairs or larger groups, usually swimming one behind the other. Each manta has a unique set of markings on their underside, useful in identification, not unlike a visible fingerprint. Spending an hour in the company of manta rays is a wonderful experience, on its own enough to earn the Diver's Paradise designation for Raja Ampat. But it's not only manta rays that make Raja Ampat special. A huge diversity of marine life, often very beautiful, adds to the place's reputation. Two Nemo clownfish nestle into their protective anemone. Some of the famous Raja Ampat dive sites are coral walls, where rich nutrients well up from nearby deep trenches. An iconic site is these tight aggregations of striped sweetlips that huddle in the protection of a coral head at the bottom of a wall, about 40 meters deep. Raja Ampat is famous for its marine diversity. One marine biologist, Dr. Gerald Allen, counted over 280 fish species on a single dive in Raja Ampat. There are at least 20 species in this single video clip. It's always worth looking back and up to see what's up there. A group of barracuda hover off the wall. Another dive site, Blue Magic, also helped make Raja Ampat famous. Along a long reef wall fed by upwelling currents from the Dampier Straits, fish life abound. Batfish, barracuda, jacks, trevally, tuna. This is what all coral reefs would look like if we didn't overfish the oceans. Morning is an exciting time on the coral reef. Many predators are still hunting, generating a tense nervous atmosphere, especially among the prey species. Sardines gave their name to the Sardine Reef dive site and provide a healthy diet for the large predators, like these blue snappers who hunt in packs. A small group of chevron barracuda hover over a large plate coral. This porcupine fish is so large that it warrants its own attendant remora, normally found on large marine creatures like whale sharks. Bumphead parrotfish are the vandals of the reef. Swimming in schools of 20 or so, these large fish bite off chunks of live coral, leaving their distinctive teeth marks everywhere. After their stomachs process the edible coral polyps and algae, they poo out pure white sand. These fish and their cousins are responsible for most of the sand found around coral reefs. What about the destruction of all this coral munching? Marine biologists believe that, while there is some short-term destruction, their vandalism is keeping the reef healthy by removing algae that could otherwise get out of control and swamp the corals. Pretty anthias swim close to the protective coral while feeding on plankton in the passing currents. Between dives, a visit to the local island village can be fun and educational. In Raja Ampat, the enforcement of the marine park regulations does not appear to be causing the local villagers any harm. In fact, quite a lot of construction can be seen, funded by the marine park entry fees. The Papuans are friendly and fun-loving. Western Mansua has a number of dive sites, characterized by the plankton in the water. This gives everything a greenish tinge, but it also feeds a huge population of marine life, like this turtle sleeping under a coral. Myriad glassfish swim over the corals. A small blue-ringed octopus moves from one hole to the next. As I mentioned earlier, the jetty at Raja Ampat Dive Lodge is an excellent dive site in its own right. Thousands of fish gather under the jetty. Batfish, scorpionfish. But the jetty is also a great place for a night dive. Easy to get in and out, close to showers and dinner, depth from 18 metres to 1 metre, sand, coral and mangrove, full of amazing critters. It's an amazing night dive location. Mantis shrimp come out hunting at night. Many species of nudibranch live around the jetty. Another morning dive sees a large school of jacks, a type of trevally. A wobbegong shark reminds me that Raja Ampat is actually the northernmost point of the Australian continental shelf. Wobbegongs, indigenous to Australia, are a member of the carpet shark family, well camouflaged for a coral reef. The bottom-dwelling Raja Ampat walking shark is unique to this region. Three tropical lobsters vie for space in this small cave, one of them living on the ceiling. Some of the giant clams at Raja Ampat are so huge that fish live inside them. The blue dots on their mantle are rudimentary eyes that trigger the slow process of closing the clam when something large swims over the top. Clams are filter feeders. Here are the filters. 3 adult batfish hover in an overhang, while nearby, a juvenile batfish hides under a cabbage coral. A curtain of glassfish slowly dissolve, revealing a small group of striped sweetlips huddling under a coral bommy. In another part of the same bommy, an electric clam uses bioluminescence to attract small prey into its stinging tentacles. Another dive site, Myascon Reef, is famous for its huge schools of colourful fish. Sit back and enjoy this marine show. dive guide, Sandro, hangs with a large school of yellow snapper and demonstrates his skill in making bubble rings during the safety stop. All too soon, the diving comes to an end and it's time to start heading home. The resort staff wave goodbye to departing guests as the powerful engines glide the speedboat out over the reef. One last look at this beautiful dive lodge in its idyllic setting before the engines power up and zoom back to Sorong. The Raja Ampat Dive Lodge staff look after their guests all the way to the airport. While the Sorong airport is not quite as good as Singapore's, it serves its purpose, and they are constructing a new terminal building. The modern Garuda jet whisks the divers away on their journey home, their head and their cameras full of great memories of the Raja Ampat Dive Lodge.